Hey guys, it's Kris Jones for episode 40 of Ask Me Anything. As you guys know, for every 10 videos in my series to 100, I still can't believe I have to do 100 of these. That's freaking awesome. I like to kind of go outside of the typical format of me just speaking to you guys. And today we have a special guest, John Augustine. John, we've been friends for what, 15 years?
15 years, about the...
Let's just do the math real quick. So it would have been back in probably 2003.
Yep.
So we're approaching 15 years. The interesting thing is, every once in a while I'll see someone succeed, and I'll be proud to know them or to be associated with them. This guy has been achieving and accomplishing things and serving this community in northeastern Pennsylvania for all of those years. So I've seen John go from, make different career moves. He used to be at the chamber, and he's always had this sort of consistent commitment to serving the public, mostly on the economic development side, which we'll talk about. But it's really been a pleasure to watch your success over these years. And when I thought of video 40 and I knew we were going to be getting together, I was like, holy cow, this is a great opportunity to introduce you to some of the folks that watch the Ask Me Anything series. So with that said, let's dive in. And by the way, one of the reasons I thought this was going to be a great opportunity to introduce you to John is because after a 20-plus year career as an entrepreneur and as an economic development leader at the highest levels in this region, John announced his candidacy for magistrate judge. And we're going to be talking more about that. And I want you guys to have an opportunity to learn more about John, because if you're in the region that John is running and will serve that community once elected, I'd love for you guys to give him some consideration. And so with that said, dude, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And tell us a little bit more about John Augustine.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised here in northeastern Pennsylvania. It was interesting that my grandfather had a restaurant in Georgetown. We had one of the first televisions in the Wyoming Valley because they would promote fight night, and then they do nickel drafts and 25-cent lobster tails. So we had everybody from
25-cent lobster tails.
Yes.
When was that? What year?
1960s and 1970s. But we had everybody from Joe Frazier to Babe Ruth, and recently found the old 8.5 millimeter film of Rocky Marciano in the bar.
Wow.
With my grandfather slinging drinks. So it was a pretty neat time. And but I'll tell you, it was hard work. If you know anything about the restaurant business, it's 40 hours, it's 80 hours. And so he had did that. We moved to Mountaintop when I was about 3 years old, because we were all living in the one apartment above the restaurant, and I've been there ever since. It's just been a great community, and it's certainly grown. I went to St. Jude's, I went to Bishop Hoban, graduated from King's. And while at King's, you know better than anybody else, this little thing happened called the internet.
Yeah.
And nobody was teaching it. Nobody was, everybody was like, what do we do? And some of our local media had ties to Disney and Cap City, so they had the technology. So I started out as an intern there. I was selling these Zip2 yellow pages, like an online directory, to people that didn't even know what a fax machine was, which made it easy. And got a great opportunity. A college professor and a mentor, Tony Massari, said, hey, come teach a class at King's.
Yeah.
I said, well, I don't know how to teach. He never did that. He said, well, we'll figure it out, but we need to do this. From there, I ended up teaching at the 3 local Penn State campuses, LCC, and found that I was teaching students about e-commerce, website design.
Sure.
Hired them as my interns, and went out against some really big companies, and I had a staff of 2 or 3, but we did the Arenas website, we did the Kirby Center. Still do a little on the side for nonprofits. I'm on the State Police Camp Cadet Board, so I volunteer my time to do that, Unico, others, and that then kind of grew into the chamber. Was there for many years doing economic development.
Before you go there, so one of the cool things about John and he told you the story, but he kind of is moving on. So here I am. I'm in law school, early 2000s. I graduate in 2003. I come home as I'm appointed district director for Congressman Paul Kanjorski. And, you start, I'm familiarizing myself with the community
Sure.
and just, I heard buzz like, you need to talk to John Augustine. He had the .com experience. John Augustine, you got to talk to him. And so I had heard of John. And then I was building a small little business called Pepper Jam at that time. And it really was small at that time.
It was.
But the congressman had said, Kris, you should really think about taking this even more serious. Focusing your full time on it. And there's this new building opening in downtown Wilkes-Barre. There's this young guy behind it by the name of John Augustine. I'm like, that's the guy that people are talking about as being this e-commerce guy that's teaching at the local colleges and whatnot. And you were just, we're still young, to be fair, but you were definitely first at the beginning of the internet, and second, someone that's been achieving stuff since a really early age. But I just want to share this story because it's where John and I first really start to develop a friendship. And so Congressman Kanjorski says, you've got to, meet this guy, John Augustine. Kris, tell him your story. They're looking at, filling out the second floor of the Innovation Center at Wilkes-Barre. And I remember that first conversation. You gave me the application and you said, it's got to go through our advisory board, but Kris, your story, everything, this is what we want. Gang, at that moment, I wasn't talking to 10 other people. I needed to convince John Augustine that Pepper Jam, at that point, had 0 employees. Mike Jones hadn't even joined yet. I had to convince this guy that somehow Pepper Jam, that somehow this idea of hiring the best and brightest people in northeastern Pennsylvania was in and of itself a business model. Just wanted to share that with you guys because you literally were, outside of Kanjo saying, Kris, you've got to do this, you were like the first person. Ken O'Krepke and Chris Herron and Von der Heide and all of the future economic development leaders of the early mid-2000s came later. Greg was in office, Skrepnak as well, and it was you, dude. So thank you. But so you get through all that, and then you end up.
Well, I just to touch on that real quick is that we had this crazy idea that the concept of an incubator wasn't new, right? And it was to grow local businesses. But for years, based on our geography, we've spent time cleaning up gray fields, brown fields, what have you, and the idea of bringing in these large companies. And for the first time, somebody had a crazy idea that said, well, maybe a 2-person shop or a 3-person shop is not a bad idea. You know how hard it was early on getting investors because there wasn't always something tangible. People invest in brick and mortar and what they see. And it took somebody crazy like me to say, we got to change our thinking.
Yeah.
We've had great leadership in this community for many years, but we had this new generation of folks coming in. Yourself, me, like you talked about Mike Jones, a whole bunch of people that said, we have to think differently. I know you have a lot of great things that you talk about, and mine is always think differently. So here's this crazy idea of Pepper Jam that you didn't know that time where it was going to be, and we had some other great successes in the incubator, but this focus on let's create a small company that may never be 100 employees, but what the coolest thing was that we both know, for the first time in the history of Wilkes-Barre, we started to see this concept of spin-offs. And that was neat. That one company then created this company, but then created a third company. And that at the end of the day, if you lost 200 or 300 person manufacturers, that hit the community. If you lost 2 people, that hurt. But we also started to give people a reason, specifically our young people, we talk about brain drain, to stay. And that was, I think, and your .coms turned out a lot better than my .bombs. So I said, when taking over the incubator, I'm like, well, I'm not sure what it takes to succeed, but I know what it takes to fail. So don't do what I did. But some great experience with working, companies in New York, and we did 3 .coms, and like I said, I still have the internet company today helping nonprofits. But it was a pretty neat run. At the chamber, building up the downtown. We're sitting in a place that was basically a blown out building that the chamber and the leadership of the community said, let's turn it into $200,000-$300,000 downtown living. It was the first high-end downtown living, and now we have PNC, we have the facility across the street, we have Luzerne Bank, we have Sidswick. I mean, look at what we started.
Yeah. And for folks that are watching this, we're actually sitting here at KBJ Capitol, which is on the second floor of Elevation Lofts, which is was really a pie-in-the-sky idea that John and Todd Vonderheide and others were behind.
And Larry, we got to talk about Larry Newman.
And Larry Newman, which this idea that somehow you could create higher-end residential living in downtown Wilkes-Barre, right? And even when I heard it, you know what I said to Todd? I'm like, yeah, put me on that list. And he called me on that. He literally called me.
No, we're really doing it.
And he said, no, these are going quick. He's like, the list is full, and guess what? You're on it. But anyway, but John was involved in that. So let's go through, because I want people who are watching to realize that you're someone who is now running for public office, which I didn't see that coming, and you're running for a judgeship. But I think what I'd love, this is a 15, 20 plus year career as a public servant, where you were, you had civic interests. The economic development side is something you and I have always connected on. When you say something like brain drain, I don't want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole here, but John was one of the people, like myself and others, who stood up and said, go ahead, you guys go tell that story. We're going to create some solutions to that. We're going to create opportunities for young people to get employed in the downtown, so that we don't just validate some of the stuff that was being said at the time. And you've been doing it, you're literally, I don't want to say your entire career, because you started out for many years as an entrepreneur, but the last 15 years of your career have been defined, as well as anyone in this entire region. Literally, out of the people I know across the world, very few people I know have been as dedicated for such a long period of time to that same civic duty of creating jobs, of getting involved in the community and being part of the solution, not part of the problem. Figuring out ways of making decisions, hard decisions that I mean, come on. This building that I'm in, the Innovation Center many people thought you were crazy, and the people involved. I didn't, although I'll be honest. Are you sure? but so you
we've all said that a lot, right?
Yeah,
Some
so you
people
did
still
that.
think
And honestly, if we were to stop right there, I think anybody listening would be like, this is a guy with a ton of experience and clearly who's had a civic duty. But guess what? We're still in the first 5 years. So for the last 10 years, kind of update me on like what I know, because I've been watching it play out in the newspaper, and it's been unbelievably consistent. But so what have you been doing the last 10 years?
So it's interesting. This is one of the only industries, when we talk about economic development, that you don't really go to school for. You don't get a degree in it, and it's hard to teach. And it's hard to teach because you have to believe it. It's a nonprofit, right? Mm-hmm. And nobody's retiring in 2 years working for a nonprofit. But made the decision early on that I'm going to be born here, grow up here, and I'm going to stay here one way or the other. Mm-hmm. So if this is my community, we're going to do what we can. So obviously the jobs was a component of it. We're out there every day, either at my role when I was at the chamber now, running Penn's Northeast, 5 counties. One of the greatest things we were able to do is be part of bringing 75 jobs to the Crestwood Industrial Park to manufacture a product. Think about that. What we used to do in this country that we lost, and now to bring manufacturing jobs back, it was crucial. But at the same time, certainly my parents, my grandparents instilled in me the need to be involved. Mm-hmm. You're on twice as many boards as I am. We know what that civic duty is, and it's easy to get up in the morning, go to work, and come home, and then call it a day. But being on everything from Leadership Wilkes-Barre, which is just a phenomenal program recognized across the country, to being on the local Kiwanis, the Mountaintop Youth Library, the soccer board. That's something that I've always been passionate about, because it's something I want to also instill in my kids. And we've done some things over the years to be even more proactive. We're fortunate. Where you live is a very safe, welcoming community, and no different than Mountaintop. But we're not without our issues. But so we started a neighborhood watch program. When there was a rash of some incidents, we did a community crime prevention panel. We go out every year through the Kiwanis and we light up the triangle with Christmas lights just to add a little bit. Yeah. Plus all the Rotaries and the civic service you do, but it's to raise money, frankly, to help the community. Yeah. And I'd love at the end of the day, one of my bucket list items is to create a community fund similar to like what the Luzerne Foundation has, but that helps mountaintop people with mountaintop issues. Yeah. And so it's been a great ride. It's been a lot of nights out, not home with the kids, but making sure you call every night to say goodnight. And I know how hard you've worked doing that, and that takes a toll on the family, and it's tough. But if that concept of fixing a broken window, if you can address one issue in your community, and then that issue addresses itself and addresses itself, that's how you get started.
3 quick things, and then I want to talk about this magistrate judgeship and why you're doing it. The first thing is Penn's Northeast is and you're the CEO of that, right?
Correct.
Having grown up in the last 15 years on the private side of economic development, helping create jobs to the various companies I've funded, Penn's Northeast is like, honestly, if I was in your shoes, that would be the position that I'd want to be in. Why? This is my second point. I've always felt that, what leadership's about? It's about being willing to be part of a small group of people that make decisions that impact a lot of people. When Absolutely. You think about the role as CEO of Penn's Northeast, you have a super concentration of power that is really a responsibility to make decisions that impact. You gave the example of the Crestwood Industrial Park, and I'm sure there's countless others. The third thing I wanted to say, so I just wanted you guys to know a little bit more about Penn's Northeast's role in economic development at a very large regional basis. The third thing is that, yes, you've probably sacrificed quite a bit with your family, but where you and I have seen each other more over the last year or two is actually with our families, whether it be at soccer events or bumping into each other at a restaurant or whatever it is. The cool thing about John that I admire, because I could relate to it being super busy and committed to my career, is that career's second, to the balance that you get by putting your wife and your family first. And I know you do that. And the reason I know it is because you don't have to tell me, you show me. So all of that said, all right. So you've had the career success that you've had in roles in economic development and leadership, among other things. Why run for magistrate judge? I mean, it almost feels like a politician, but it doesn't, because I think that it's a position that is known for non-political type of roles. So you're not an attorney.
Correct.
Right? You're not like a law enforcement official, or even though you've been trained in those areas on your own dime and as part of your own preparation. So the magistrate judges, from what I understand, are supposed to represent a civic-minded member of the community who's had a history of good judgment and a track record of commitment to those types of things. But where's the why in all this? Why you have a great job, and
right.
What's going on?
Well, if you ask my wife, I think she's still saying why, and wondering that. But just real quick on the family thing, that I just want to hit that home. You say, family is always first. Nobody should ever have to be in a position that says, I can't make your soccer game. Yeah. I can't make your dance recital. Because jobs are a dime a dozen. No matter what you do or where you do, you can get a job. But the family is very important. And really, that was one of the reasons. I've always been interested, as you have in political life. Like you said, working for the congressman, and there are various roles that you do. What I found interesting about this position, and at the time, we just came off the longest serving magistrate in the history of Pennsylvania. 40 years that person was there. There's a reason why people stay there for a long time. I think you got to go back and say, well, what was the position? It was created way back when, during the William Penn days, as the justice of the peace. Yeah. And the idea was, there wasn't a lot of lawyers running around. There wasn't actually a lot of law enforcement at the time. I mean, it was community issues. And I use this goofy example, but it was the average citizen that people knew to say, hey, they can be fair, they can be impartial, they can be neutral, that they're just going to, just common sense stuff. You know, hey, your dog ate my chicken. No, he didn't. Well, there's 2 feathers in his mouth. All right, we'll get them 2 chickens. You know, or you know, the tree fell on the fence. Well, you don't have to sue each other. Let's fix the fence. And you know, before we had this litigious society, that was how it came up, and then it grew and grew into a world. It's again one of the only positions that you can hold from a judicial standpoint where you don't have to be a lawyer. And the reason was, and in fact, Luzerne County is interesting. There's only 2 or 3 lawyers out of all the magistrates, and in the state, out of over 500, almost 80% are not. And again, the law profession is an esteemed profession. With yourself. Same thing with law enforcement, right? We don't have society without law enforcement. If you're really good at what you do on one side of the law or the other, it's hard not to take that home with you and then wake up the next day, then somebody go and shut that off. So again, to have somebody there, and what I found was, you're not there to punish people. Mm-hmm. You're there to help people. Mm-hmm. There's a reason somebody's standing in front of you. And a case that we used, an example was, if somebody's caught stealing and the fine is X dollars, and they stole milk, chances are they're probably not going to have the money for the fine. Yeah. How about we try to get them a job? How about we try to get them new community service? How about we get our kids busy so they're not out, doing it? And as you know, unfortunately, in this country, not just locally, the opioid issue is out of control. We have cyber crimes, victims with the elderly. And I think with my background, it's not just about X hours that you sit behind the bench. Mm-hmm. It's a position that you now can go out in the community to do different things, positive things, proactive things, whether it's going into a classroom, whether it's going to a senior center. Mm-hmm. And so, people think of judges as those that dispel the law and sentence people and do that. I think the magisterial district judges is kind of the opposite, that you're the community peace holder. Mm-hmm. Let's figure it out together. Yeah. Let's figure out how we're not necessarily going to be tough on it. Let's be fair. Yeah. And let's figure out a way to kind of, again, if we can change that one to make somebody better off our community is.
It's awesome. And I think that you're, I think that you'd bring an incredible amount of leadership to the position, and just having known you for as long as I have, and who would you represent? What is the district? What does it include? Sure. And especially for someone that's watching that might be in it and they decide to vote for you.
Yeah, and Mountaintop's a growing community, so we have people that have lived there their whole life, and talking 80, 90 years, and we have, I'm still new Mountaintop, even though I've been there almost 40 years, that's still considered new, and then we have newer flux of people, not just locally, but from, New Jersey, New York, and others as our community grows. And the position is you have to be certified and qualified to hold the position. So whether that's going through law school and spending that time, or as a lay person, taking a grueling test, one of the hardest things that I ever did, 26 pages of essays. I don't think I did that throughout college. Sorry, Kings. But you're that kind of first line. And so what you deal with is local issues. Mm-hmm. So whether that's civil, in terms of, again, a neighbor dispute, a landlord-tenant issue, you deal with misdemeanors, traffic violations, noise violations, fishing game. So everything that's kind of on this local level. And what you're trying to do is being a clearinghouse, so it doesn't have to go to the county level. We know the backlog there, but hey, if we can work something out together on both sides that's amicable and agreeable and the right legal thing to do, let's do that before we kind of debate. So really you're a mediator in a way. Mm-hmm. We have judicial canons and laws that we need to follow, But like you said, you're there to help people, and the district, as they've tried. This district is 11306. What that means, it's basically the Crestwood School District.
Okay.
So if you live in from Wright Haven to New Angola to Dorrance, Slocum, Rice, Denison, Penn Lake, hopefully I got them all in there. But it's that Crestwood School District, and again, it's the you have to live in the community. That's another important thing, that you can't run and live somewhere else, because you want to be ingrained in the community. Sure. And that's a tough thing too, because you might have a neighbor in front of you. You might have a neighbor's kid in front of you, and that's a hard thing to do. Yeah. But that's the district.
Cool. Well, it's my honor to spend time giving John an opportunity to share with you his background, and I'll do it for you. You guys should really think about voting for John Augustine for magistrate judge. I will see you guys for episode 41. Feel free to reach out to me privately or post comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys soon.